Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
Northwest Ohio is home to one of the oldest Muslim communities in America. What began with Arabs from Syria and Lebanon now includes representatives from dozens of countries with diverse ethnic backgrounds. They united through their faith and shared beliefs to create a thriving community that is often more Middle America than Middle East.
Islamic Toledo is made possible with the support of Thomas and Kathleen Donnell. Production funding also provided through the generous gifts from the following families and individuals. And others, a complete list is available. And by the financial support of viewers like you. Thank you.
The first Arabs came to Toledo from Syria in search of wealth and the promise of a better life. Others fled military conscription by the Ottoman Empire.
The Ottoman Empire, which ruled over the Arab Middle East, Syria included, put in place a conscription system whereby after 1908, even Christians were subject to being conscripted into the Ottoman army.
Families said, well, either my son's going to be conscripted into the military, he's not going to make any money, he's going to be away from home, he won't be able to farm the land for us, or I could send him to the U.S. where he can make money and provide for his family back home.
The bulk of the Arabic-speaking immigrants came in the 1880s, late 1880s, between that time and World War I, at much smaller numbers than other so-called new immigrants, Poles, Jews, Italians from South and East Europe.
Christians began coming. They came long before the Muslims did. An older lady was telling me that her uncle, when he got on the boat from Beirut to come to the States, he asked somebody, where do you pray there? How many mosques are there in America? And he looked at him and said, what are you talking about? What is a mosque? He said, what? There are no mosques? So he packed his bag and went back to Beirut. He decided not to come to this country at all. Where there is no mosque, where there's, I mean, you think about, how am I going to be buried? I mean, how am I going to get married? So they came much later because of that.
Unfortunately, many Muslims, they chose to immigrate years after the Christian population, who already was a late comer into the United States. By the time the Muslims decided to immigrate, American immigration and quota laws were into full effect.
It started in the 1880s and became almost prohibitive by 1924, whereby only 1% of the immigrants already residing in the United States can enter, based on the 1890 census, when hardly anyone was in the country except Northwestern Europeans, for example. So very, very few people came in from anywhere in the world except Northwestern Europe.
When you come to Ellis Island, they tell you you need 2 names in America. You don't need 3 or you don't need 4. Many people who came from the Middle East got their names shortened, got their names changed, and it was basically based on the understanding that the people at Ellis Island had of the language. It's not a Romance language, it's Arabic.
My father came here in 1902 with his cousins. They came from the Bekaa Valley in Lebanon. When he came in, they asked him, what's your name and what you do? And his cousin happened to be a barber. Halaq means in Arabic is a barber. And they put a tag on their shoulders, both of them, their cousins, and they both became Halaq as they come into the country.
My grandfather had 7 brothers who came to this country, and they got different names. Only 2. Najib, my grandfather, and his brother Richard got the same name.
The Syro-Lebanese community got started through a gentleman named Michael J. Nasser. He was a member of the Christian community. He was a peddler at first, and when he came to Toledo, he set up his dry goods store, which attracted lots of other peddlers.
That was a way to make money fairly quickly, as opposed to other immigrants who were scurrying around looking for work.
Some of the Syrian Lebanese immigrants were drawn to the Midwest by the promise of factory jobs in cities like Detroit and Toledo.
A lot of them work at AP Parts, they work at the Autolite, they work at Willis Overland. And some of them, they went into business.
The first Syrian and Lebanese immigrants were Christians who settled in Toledo's North End.
Maybe 30, 40 Lebanese families, but they're all Orthodox or Catholic.
Muslims first came to Toledo in 1914, but most arrived after World War II and moved into neighborhoods all over the city.
There was very little knowledge of Islam. Muslim people at that time were called Mohammedans.
In 1922, the Toledo paper did an article on the Mohammedans of Toledo. The article went on to say, here's how they pray, they're very good people, and they should be regarded with the same type of respect that their Syrian Christian brothers had with the community.
The early Muslims in Toledo were mostly businessmen, quick to adopt the habits and culture of their new environment.
At that time, many, I guess, Lebanese or Arabs changed their names, Americanized their names, anglicized their names.
When I first came here, you say Mohammed, you think that you're saying a cuss word. So that's what I named myself, Mike. So anybody asks me, I say, what's your name? My name is Mike.
People have problems saying Yahya, yeah. They couldn't pronounce it right. They never heard of Yahya. In Arabic, Yahya, in English, John. John the Baptist means Yahya in the Quran.
It made it a lot easier for them to be accepted, to assimilate.
They first gathered for religious services in private homes, rented halls, and local parks. Prayers and holidays were observed, but there was no imam to provide spiritual leadership and guidance. Islam forbids the use and sale of alcohol, but when prohibition was repealed in 1933, many of Toledo's Muslim businessmen were left to choose between providing for their families or preserving their faith.
You didn't have Islam informing their experience at every turn as it does now, for example. Muslims had a preference for not trading with alcohol, but that, frankly, is a fairly recent phenomenon.
It became a common thing to convert their business into a bar business or a restaurant business because it was more profitable.
When I came here, all the 18 families, I'll say 15 out of the 18 were in the bar business.
I'd never been in a bar, let alone buying a business, but I was more or less desperate. And this is one business that wasn't very hard to learn how to operate and manage.
90% of the business people came in here. They were financed by beer company, pub company, and other people to go into business. So you will find every corner that has a bar. Every one of us come in here, don't know anything, don't have no money. What do you do? Buckeye Brewery said, oh, here's $10,000. Go open a place and you sell my beer, I'll lend you the money.
They weren't educated in terms of schooling and degrees. They were hard workers. They were very smart. They wanted to make a better life for themselves and their families.
You gotta exist. So these things that was done was tough. Very hard on the Lebanese community, specifically the Muslim, to be in that kind of business.
As these gentlemen evolved in their religious faith, they got out of the bar business.
I became the secretary of the very first organization. It was called the Syrian American Muslim Society. We started planning on building a mosque.
The Greek have their own church, the Italians had their own churches, and everybody had their own recognition, so we decided we want to build a mosque and be recognized in the community.
They did donate a lot of money to the mosque in order to open a mosque in Toledo, and truth be told, if it wasn't for their money, there would not be a mosque in Toledo.
They purchased a lot at 722 East Bancroft, near Cherry, and began building their mosque.
I was on my honeymoon. And my stop on my way coming in a train from Iowa. My brother says, oh, we have a fundraiser in Toledo. They're going to build a mosque. Oh, yeah, I want to go. So we came here. Instead of go to Niagara Falls, we came here.
When it opened in 1954, it was the first mosque in Ohio and only the 8th in the country. Although it paled in comparison to mosques in the old country, it quickly became the cornerstone of Toledo's Muslim community.
That's where everybody gathered. I mean, our social life, our religious life, everything was in that building. Everything was centered around the mosque.
It was inspiring. The fact that a few Muslims put together a building and have a place where you can pray, where you can meet other people, where you can celebrate the holidays, where you go Friday prayer. I thought that was wonderful.
Mosques where I grew up, they were just place for prayer. If there was any social activity, it would have taken place way outside the Islamic, the mosque building itself.
They had dinners and they had the kitchen going, and they would have dances in the basement, which is very, very unusual. You don't do that in mosques, but it was done here. And I thought that was very interesting. And it brought the people together in a sense.
And for the weddings, there was dancing, Arabic dancing. So it was religious and it was social. It was basically Lebanese. At that time, there were very few non-Lebanese Muslims in town.
We were the first, I guess, non-Arabic speaking.
We came in 1954. We end up in Toledo because our oldest brother has graduated from Michigan State and he got a job with Toledo Scale Company. We met a young man, his name is Eddie Mahfouz, and he was Lebanese from the Islamic group, and he was on the campus with us as a freshman. So he took us home to his mom, and his mom just somehow adopted us since then, like we became her children. And that's how we got to know the Lebanese families here. And we got involved with the Islamic Center. And then we became a part of the youth club there.
Everybody in the community supported the youth club. It was very important to them, and we felt it. And we knew that that was something really important to our parents.
There was a national Islamic youth organization, and you would get to go to visit the various mosques in Detroit or Cedar Rapids. You'd have conventions every year, and we'd get to meet other kids from other towns.
For nearly a century, quotas restricted the flow of immigration into the United States.
Prior to
63.
President Kennedy, there were 100 people allowed to come from that subcontinent every year.
From India?
Indian subcontinent.
Pakistan,
That's
India,
Pakistan,
total.
India, and Bangladesh, and all this. President Kennedy changed that in his time, and then on we had the, so to speak, floodgate open up.
After the 1960s, 1970s, the new wave was mostly educated college students who were coming to the United States for education, who eventually stayed.
The Islamic community in this town was also a reason for them to come.
We came to Toledo because of the mosque, because there was a mosque in Toledo, and I want to raise my kids as Muslims.
Less than 10 years after the Islamic Center of Toledo opened, changing immigration patterns found it bursting at the seams.
It was very obvious that there were a lot of Muslim immigrants who came to Toledo, and the building started to become really small to accommodate all of us. In the late 70s, we decided to look around for some bigger area, and we located the place in Pearisburg.
It was a piece of a farm left over when the expressway built, 75. This was the back part of the thing, so it's a triangular piece left over there.
And we decided that with the traffic and the visibility, people would want to know what a mosque is. And if they wanted to know what a mosque was, we could give them tours, we could let them come in, and we could explain what Muslims are and what they're all about and how they're not so much different from everyone else.
It's the best location. We say that there are more people see the White Mosque than the White House.
We went back to our community And we said, this is what we want to do. And we started to raise money.
No religious organization has enough money, but we really didn't have any. When we embarked on that project, we had $500, I think $500 in the bank.
And they signed personal guarantees to purchase property, and they signed personal guarantees on a building contract.
We bought the land. A year or so later, we put the foundation in, and then sometime after that, we started to build what is now the Islamic Center of Greater Toledo.
We broke ground. The images in my mind are the children, how they were excited. And so we gave them the shovels. Those kids are now adults, have their own children, but they were part of that, turning the ground for a future Islamic center.
It was really very unique, and coming out of the cornfield, like just growing up. When we were building, the truck drivers go by and they think some farmer building a palace for himself.
Silos.
Or they saw the silo, oh my God, the rocket gonna shoot out there or something.
When we inaugurated the place, it was a great moment for all of us. That a dream, which really in the beginning appeared impossible.
The fact that in Islam that you help build the mosque, every time somebody prays here, you get a tiny percentage of a plus sign on the right side. So that's all I care about. I don't care if they recognize what I said, what I did, or my husband. I could care less about that. Because after all, what is that going to give me? But to have a plus on the Day of Judgment, that's a big deal.
As the community planned the Islamic Center of Greater Toledo, they were also seeking a new cleric to lead them.
We heard about Imam Khattab. He was unique in the sense that he brought with him a vision and an open-mindedness about religion, which I had not seen in many people.
Imam Khattab did not believe that you had to wear hijab, which is the head covering or the entire body covering, in order to be a good Muslim. He believed that you had to cover your head for prayer, women did, that when they were sitting in the sermon room they should be covered. But it wasn't a true measure of whether or not you were a Muslim, whether you were covered all the time. These were ideas that our wives loved to hear. These were ideas that our daughters would grow up hearing, and they would understand that Islam wasn't necessarily dogmatic.
Imam Khattab prohibited dancing in the mosque, but allowed men and women to use the same entrance and pray side by side, separated by a low partition.
All these innovations were non-existent in the Muslim world. So here in Toledo, Ohio, we set something which was very unique, and it had the blessing and the authority of a man who was very learned, and he could stand and defend as to what he had agreed to. So this was a great blessing for this community, to have a man like him.
With the rapid growth of the Islamic community, it wasn't long before other mosques were established in Toledo.
Masjid Saad was started by the international students at the University of Toledo.
They rented a place on Cheltenham. Their parents, very well-to-do, they gave them money to buy the house instead of renting. Bought the house and make it into a mosque. They name it in the honor of the Saad, the name, the guy that gave them the money to buy Cheltenham.
Also, literally, it means good luck. So the Mosque of Saad, it was called at that time Masjid Saad, or the Mosque of Saad. The Masjid Saad community used to be mainly students being on campus, and mainly actually international students. But over the years, things have changed significantly. The students who were here already and they got married, they had families, or the people who moved to Toledo, they all came and settled down around Masjid Saad in the northern part of Toledo and in Sylvania. The growth of the community became exponential. In 91, we moved to Dorr Street, and in 93, we moved to Secor, and in 2007, we moved to Alexis Road. Much bigger land, a bigger building, really an excellent move. So this serves the people on the north end, and the Islamic Center serves the people on the south end. So it's really one big community.
For years, Masjid al-Islam of Toledo has served Muslims of the inner city.
This mosque has been here since 1980, and its origins lies in the old Nation of Islam movement. In 1975, the leader of the movement, by the name of Elijah Muhammad, he passed away, and his son, by the name of Wallace D. Muhammad, he became the leader of the organization. And he, over the course of a couple of years, basically led the group in the direction of traditional Islam, meaning the Islam that is found in the Muslim scripture, the Quran, and in the tradition of the Prophet Muhammad. And so this mosque was a part of that movement.
In 2010, Masjid al-Islam purchased the original Islamic Center of Toledo on East Bancroft Street and rededicated Ohio's first mosque.
I hope that they have terrific years there and build memories the way we did when we were at that center.
Sharifi Qadri is really a person of history, no question about it. She became president of the Islamic Center, and to our knowledge, that is the first woman to hold such a position in the United States. In fact, I don't know if these positions exist anywhere else other than the United States, that a woman president of an Islamic organization.
Of course, that was when 9/11 happened. And she gets great accolades and reviews from me for her conduct at the center that year, especially after 9/11, and how troublesome that period of time was for our country and for our community, who felt so bad because our religion was hijacked.
I heard the news, and my heart sank. And I said, oh God, I hope it's not Muslims or Arabs. But it was.
I remember just sitting there thinking, now what do I do? There was a lot of questions to be answered, a lot of press calling. That night, somebody shot at our window. The media got hold of it just because of police scanners, and they knew what was going on, and I didn't want copycats, but it actually ended up having just the opposite effect. We ended up with fantastic people calling and saying, we're very sorry what happened to you. People stopping by with flowers. Kids sending us $10 because they took a collection for our window fund.
They looked at us as members of the community, and they looked at us as being victims, as they felt they were victims.
The anguish of that week continued with the death of Imam Khattab.
Imam Khattab had been sick, had been ill with pancreatic cancer. He ended up dying on September 15th.
The mosque was full, was absolutely full, not just Muslim, but anybody who had an opportunity or some time to go, they were there for the services.
He touched a lot of lives and a lot of people, and that showed. It was evident at his funeral.
Here in the Toledo area, I think that if anything, the tragedy of 9/11 led to a strengthening of ties between the Muslim and the non-Muslim community.
One of the radio stations in town started telling people that come to the Islamic Center to show your support.
And we ended up postponing it about half an hour. And I said, well, why aren't we starting? And they said, well, we just got a phone call and traffic is lined up for a mile in Perrysburg with people trying to get here.
I was amazed by the community of Toledo. When they all came together, joined hand in hand in a circle around the whole mosque, that was
about 3,000 people showed up, all different Christian denominations.
Quite a moment.
And they all hold hand, and that was really unbelievable.
We prayed together for all the souls of the people.
But instead of looking inwardly toward the center, they looked all outwardly in a very symbolic thing, and that was that we would protect this place. When we saw that, it was overwhelming, seeing that wonderful, wonderful gesture of support.
We accomplished a lot. From the few families that were here in Toledo and way back during the Depression, or when the first mosque was built in the 50s, the progress was really great. Right now the community grew 100-fold. I look at it with a great deal of pride.
Toledo's Islamic community is bigger and more culturally diverse than ever before. But the future of the progressive innovations made at the Islamic Center of Greater Toledo is uncertain. Its prominent position in the community has inspired increased immigration by Muslims from all over the world. However, a growing number of them support more traditional beliefs, especially concerning the role of women in Islam.
Unless we are diligent, by we I mean the moderates, unless we are diligent and active and proactive in this moderation, this inclusiveness will disappear. And it would be a travesty in a sense, because that's not what Islam is all about. No one has the right key to open the doors of heaven. We all have keys, and it's only God who judges, not us.
For all the progress, being Muslim in America still poses challenges, and the local community serves as a lightning rod when the consequences of world events fuel anger, intolerance, and suspicion.
Our allegiance, of course, as you can see from 9/11, and everything after that, is to this country, is to the United States of America. It's not to some Muslim organizations or Muslim governments.
We, as Muslims, consider ourselves as American Muslims. So we don't find there is a contradiction between being an American and being a Muslim. Just like there is no contradiction between being an American and being a Catholic. These hyphenated names may appear artificial, but they really tell you something significant. And that is that I am very proud to be an American. I've lived here for 45 years plus. But at the same time, I have a faith that I believe in, and I don't see my faith and my being American is contradictory, are mutually exclusive.
Islamic Toledo is made possible with the support of Thomas and Kathleen Donnell. Production funding also provided through the generous gifts from the following families and individuals. And others. A complete list is available. And by the financial support of viewers like you. Thank you.